Hey, it's Clay. Welcome to another League of Legends video. Welcome to another patch notes, I guess, analysis. This is going to be for patch 4.1. So this is our, it's kind of cool to see Riot update to the 4X in terms of the patch notes. Kind of exciting to see us move into a new season. This is my first new season in League of Legends. I started playing at the very beginning of Season 3 last year, and I've come a long way since then, so pretty exciting stuff. But anyways, let's go ahead and check things out. I don't know what I was expecting out of like patch 4.1. I didn't actually think it would come so soon, but I guess we're 2 weeks into January, so it is high time that we get the new season underway, and I believe the EU LCS started today as well. But anyways, some good stuff in here. I think some good changes overall is kind of my first impression. But anyways, we'll get right into it. I don't want this to be too long, so anyways, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's go ahead and start with the champions. So Anivia, I think, got some nice little quality of life. I don't exactly know what the correct use of quality of life is, but I'm going to characterize these as quality of life buffs, or maybe just straight up buffs. But increasing her base attack projectile, it's really nice because it's pretty painful the last hit with her, especially pre-6 can be annoying. So this will definitely feel nice. Reducing mana cost on her Q and her W, and giving a update on her Glacial Storm. So basically just making her a little bit better champion to use. I think there's a chance we could see a little bit of a Anivia resurgence. It seems like when champions get touched in patches, there seems to be like a reflection in their solo queue status, and any time a champion gets buffed, they tend to be on the cusp of being flavor of the month. And especially with the popularity of someone like Ziggs, I think Anivia fills a similar role. She's very good at controlling space. She's got good AoE. She's got a lot of soft and hard crowd control, but very immobile. So potentially we could see some comebacks of Anivia, but I guess time will tell. But yeah, definitely changes she needed. I mean, just look at this. Like, her Q used to cost 160 mana at max rank. That's pretty insane. 150 mana for her W. That's pretty nuts. So overall, definitely good stuff here for Anivia. Nerfs to Annie. Thank you, Riot. Annie has been destroying bot lane. She's been one of the strongest supports in the game since Worlds. With, I believe it was the Chinese team would play her a lot, and she is insanely good. But they changed her stun so that instead of being 1.75 seconds at all levels, it's now leveled at 1.25, 1.5, and then 1.75 at levels 1, 6, and 11. And then to compensate for that nerf, they're actually reducing the cooldown of Tibbers, her ultimate, at higher ranks, so instead of 120 at all ranks. So overall, these are good changes. She really needed this. 1.25 second stun is still scary, but not quite as scary as a 1.75. That may be the difference between another auto attack, possibly. But anyways, I do think this is a very needed change. Annie is really dominant, but I don't think that this nerfs her into the ground. I still think she'll be strong. She can still zone really well. She's, even a 1.25 second stun is still really good. But yeah, she just kind of scales a little bit better. Her late game is actually going to be even better now. Once she hits levels 11, she's actually going to be nothing but better because her Tibbers will be lower cooldown and her stun will be the same. So needed changes here. Now some changes to Evelynn. Evelynn has been really powerful. She's been almost a constant banned champion in solo queue because of the vision changes. Now the biggest thing here is they're kind of, this is an interesting approach. So the core thing that makes Evelynn scary is her passive, which gives her stealth, but they're not actually targeting that, which is an interesting approach. So first of all, they're taking her Q, or hate spike, this is her main damage source, and reducing the missile speed. I am very curious as to how this will affect her. So they're almost having it. Maybe this will make it a lot easier for people to dodge her hate spike. I'm also curious to know how this will interact with the cooldown, because it's a very low cooldown. Usually when people play Evelynn, they're like spamming the Q button. So I'm wondering exactly how much this will change. Now they're changing her Ravage. This is her like double attack to physical damage instead of magic damage. Another interesting change. So for the typical AP based Evelynn build, this will be a nerf because you're not going to be taking advantage of all the magic penetration you're building. Like a Void Staff and a Liandry's are definitely items that Evelynn has been building. So definitely a little bit of a nerf, but this also opens her up to potentially other builds that are more physical damage based, focusing more on her auto attacks. So I wonder if maybe like an AD Evelynn build focusing on her Ravage instead of her hate spike could potentially be used, because I think her hate spike also has an AD ratio. I'm pretty confident that it does. Yep, it does. So actually, it seems like an 80 ratio, and this gives her a nice attack speed. That's a pretty big attack speed steroid. So I wonder if maybe this could be a thing now. But then also her shield on her ultimate will be granted instantly, which I think is a nice change. So I'm curious to see. This definitely reduces some of her power a little bit, but it definitely doesn't touch on like what is the core thing about her that makes her powerful. So I still think she'll be strong, just a little bit less overwhelming in terms of damage. Next up is Janna. Janna got a much needed buff, and I really like the direction she took this. So first off, with her ultimate Monsoon, this is where she, goes all crazy. I have the Forecast Janna skin, which I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite skins in all of League of Legends, and she does all this crazy shouting. It's hilarious. But the channeling is immediate upon activation, and I really like this change. So instead of having a little cast time, it's immediate, and this actually gives Janna a lot more room to make plays. So Janna is generally considered a counter to some champions that with really good hard engage, like a Kennen or maybe a Mumu, and this even makes Janna better at stuff like that, where when you see these champions with these AoE hard engages coming at your team, you can hit your ult and knock them away, and this just gives Janna even more time to make plays. Now, they did reduce the total Chan duration to 3 seconds from 4 seconds. That's not a huge it's not a huge deal, I don't think. I'm guessing, okay, so if the heal per second, I'm not actually sure how, but it does say her total heal amount has been increased. Okay, the AP ratio. So I'm curious to see as to how much actual healing is done, but specifically the channel time and increasing the healing is really nice. So definitely a buff to Janna, and it just gives her more play-making potential, which is, I think, an area where maybe she has been lacking. So good stuff here from Janna. This even gives potential to make some offensive plays. Sometimes when I'm playing Janna, I like to flash in and then Monsoon somebody backwards. So this gives you more potential to make that play a little bit easier. So good stuff here. Next up is Jinx. She's considered one of the top tier 80 carries, along with Lucian. Right now, maybe even Sivir's on that list, but definitely Jinx has been top tier for a little bit. They're lowering her base health from 500 to 462, so that's about an auto attack less when you take armor into consideration, but then her health per level is increased. This is just going to straight up nerf her early game pretty much, so kind of brings her power down a little bit right there in terms of an early game carry. I definitely think Jinx is a very strong late game carry, with her Q giving her a massive steroid. With her reset potential on her passive, she can really be a strong hyper carry, so this kind of focuses her more of an A of late game champion. And then the Flame Chopper's kind of got bug fixed, I'm going to call that. Reducing damage in early levels, which it hits it, but like 20 damage, I don't know, it's not a huge deal. Mostly bug changes, so a little bit of a nerf to Jinx. I think she needed it. Nasus has been the bane of many people. He's been getting targeted with some nerfs as of recent. This time, they are reducing the range on his Wither by 100 units, and also Fear of the Sands no longer will increase the cast ranges of his Wither or Spiritfire. So, not necessarily... Yeah, I think the Wither change hurts him a little bit. That's his main crowd control ability. It's what helps him close the... It's pretty much his gap closer. He doesn't close the gap by moving himself. He closes the gap by making sure you can't run away. So by reducing the range on his Wither, that's definitely going to hurt him. I'm not actually sure how much this will hurt him, though. It's hard to say. But this is definitely a nerf. But I guess we'll see. Time will have to tell as far as how much this hits Nasus. I think he's a tough champion to deal with just because he's got a really good combination of tankiness and sustain as well as late game scaling. So I definitely think he deserved a little bit of a nerf. And I don't think this is a bad place to hit him. Next up is Rengar. Rengar, he was disabled for a while because of a bug. And I think that they fixed that bug with his Q. And interestingly, the Savagery basic attack has been reduced to 2 seconds from 6. So I believe that this will not allow you to... I actually don't know if this is... Is this like the death of the triple Q? So I know with Rengar you could do it before where if you used your ultimate and your Q at the right time, you could actually get 3 Q procs off immediately. Just 1, 2, 3. With the way that his Fury mechanic works, or Savagery, I'm not actually sure what it's called, but this may be the death of it because you can't actually proc it within enough time. I believe you needed to get it within 6 seconds. So I think this might be the death of that. And definitely fix some bugs, so that's good. And then the big thing here is hitting his W, Empowered Battle Roar Healing. So what a lot of Rengars have been doing recently is maxing W, building Sunfire Cape, Spirit Visage, and maxing W, and then using the heal every time it's up, and just having a ton of sustain. And now you're not going to have that as much. Basically, this is a straight nerf to the heal amount, unless Rengar is really low on health. So in terms of lane sustain, it's going to be much weaker. And so he's not going to have the same sort of playstyle. And this might actually, really hurt Rengar overall, because he kind of felt this weird niche where, and it's kind of an interesting situation where people were like abusing kind of the fringe cases of his kit and making him viable. And like as an assassin, I don't really think he is very strong. I think that the tank style playstyle into assassin late game was a lot better for him. So I think this is a pretty solid nerf, and I don't necessarily think we're going to see much Rengar more after this, just because it's kind of hitting two of his core, the triple Q thing, and with his sustain. If any of you have played a lot of Rengar, please let me know in the comment section what this actually does to him, because I'm not familiar enough with the deep intricacies of Rengar and his Q. So let me know. And next up is Riven. I know a lot of people are going to be very happy about this nerf to Riven. Basically, Riven is absolutely broken in terms of early game. It's impossible to trade with her. She's just so strong, and they're really hitting her early damage. So her base attack damage has been reduced by 2 points, and her attack damage per level is increased. Again, a straight up nerf. I mean, this right here is a pretty minimal buff. So a straight up nerf to her early game. I don't know, about 3 attack damage. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but I mean, it's basically like taking 1 less attack damage quint, I think. Gives you 2.5 AD, so a little bit of a nerf, but definitely one that's deserved. But the big one is the Broken Wings. The damage has been changed, so one thing to notice is this total attack damage from bonus attack damage. That's a big change, because people will look at like, oh, 70, that's way lower than this, and also like 90, that's way lower than 130, but you have to realize this is total attack damage, and that's going to take into account your base AD. So I think that what this will do is it kind of smooths out the curve. When you're only dealing in bonus AD, if you buy like a BF Sword or a Bloodthirster, all of a sudden your Q is doing like a metric truckload of damage. Whereas, if you're behind, you're getting, maybe some, you're relying more on your flat AD from your levels. If you're relying more on like Doran's Blades and stuff, then you're going to notice that you're not quite as far behind. So basically, it's kind of like smoothing out the power spike when she buys attack damage, because this definitely will not spike as hard as this. But then the big thing here is that, if she's way, way ahead, she's not going to be dealing as much damage. And Riven is very much a snowball-based champion, so I definitely think this is a solid nerf to her. And also right here, shield duration reduced by a full second. This is kind of a big deal, because Riven's shield, I believe it's on like a 6-second cooldown at max rank, so you basically had almost 50% uptime. They're cutting that down quite a bit, and her shield was a really, really important part of her to staying alive, especially in team fights, where things get hectic. That shield is really, really important. So some really solid nerfs to Riven, and I still think that if you're really good with her, she can be really good, but just not quite as oppressively strong right now. And another thing to keep in mind is that, when you have a champion like Riven in the game, there are, she heavily counters certain champions. So champions like, I don't know, somebody like Vladimir, he can't do jack squat against Riven, and that makes him a tough pick. But now that Riven is not as powerful, other picks that previously didn't really have much viability in the top lane can now suddenly have a little bit better time. So, if we look back at like Nasus, I know Riven is a strong pick against Nasus. So if he wasn't getting this nerf, suddenly he'd be like uberly good. So you have to think about this in terms of like an ecosystem. When Riven gets weaker, champions that she was really good against suddenly become stronger. So keep that in mind. If you play certain champions, you hate Riven, this is the time to play them. Shyvana, another really, really strong top laner. This is just a straight up nerf to her damage. Her burnout is getting a little bit less damage. This isn't a tremendous nerf. If you look at like the magic damage as a whole, 560 from 595, 80 from 85. Not really the end of the world, but this is, I think, a pretty, it was needed. Her burnout just did a lot of damage. Flame Breath also dealing less damage, specifically at early ranks. So you're going to want to definitely max this either first or second, probably second. But at earlier levels with 1 point, you're doing less damage. And then I think that's a bug fix right there. Thresh. Interesting changes here. So I guess I'm going to call this, I don't know what to call this. So with Dark Passage, it's kind of this weird bug where people would throw down a bunch of wards on your lantern so that your ally can't actually click on the Dark Passage. And that was kind of a weird thing. And also there's this funny thing about how like people will actually, they can't walk directly on top of it. They have to click on the lantern. So kind of a nice quality of life change there, making it less buggy, more like a real interactive thing in the game. I like that. And then a little bit of a nerf to the box. It actually, the delay on the wall formation is a little bit higher. So like they said, the idea here is that you can't just, throw the box out and hope to catch somebody unless you're for sure that they're within your radius. Next up would be Yasuo. So Yasuo, I believe, I've gotten a lot of like conflicted opinions on Yasuo. I've heard some really high-level players say that he's really, really strong. I've heard other people say that he's total garbage. I'm not actually sure what to think about him yet. I still think that the community will figure him out. He's a very difficult champion to play. And if you look at champions like that in the past, like Syndra and maybe Jace, when they were released, nobody knew what to do with them. They were considered really bad. But then, maybe they got a couple of nice buffs. Maybe their kit got, smoothed out a little bit. And then they found a niche in the meta, and then they're strong champions. So I think Yasuo could be in that type of a place. He's got a couple of things that are really good. Specifically, I think his passive is really, really strong. The double crit chance as well as the whole flow thing with his shield. I want to say at max rank, or at max level, his shield gives him like 600 extra hit points. Something like that. I mean, it's just crazy. And so that part of his kit is really, really good. He's got extreme mobility, but very short range and very team reliant. So definitely, I think Yasuo is a champion who has very extreme positives and extreme negatives. And if you can find a way to kind of reconcile those two more on the positive side, he can be really good. That's kind of my take on him. But anyways, just kind of some... I mean, really the only buff here would be here that he gets maximum flow on cast. That's really nice. So whenever he casts his R, it's like guaranteed maximum shield. So that's really nice because that's when you're going to be like going in to fight is when you cast your ult. So that's really nice, I think. And then spell animation shortened by just a little bit. And the rest of this, I think, are just kind of bug fixes. But, so good stuff right there. So overall, those are kind of the big changes. Other ones I want to highlight is this Darius change. So there used to be a time where whenever he got a kill, the cooldown on his ult got completely reset. They changed that so that the cooldown on his ultimate was reset within 12 seconds. And now they're extending this out to 20. I think this is a pretty solid change. Darius has been in a little bit of a weak champion, I'd say, and a little bit of a underpowered status. Definitely a lane bully who can snowball really hard. But I think this is a good change. This 12 seconds right here was a little bit rough. So, good stuff right there. Other than that, I'm not actually sure if there's anything else that really deserves to be pointed out. I mean, a lot of this stuff is just little bug fixes, little quality of life buffs. Olaf get a little bit of a nerf to his Undertow. The slow has been reduced. A little bit of a nerf. I wouldn't say this is the end of the world, though. But, Olaf is in a pretty strong spot, at least in my opinion. I think he's really good. So, good stuff there. And then a couple of big things here on these items. Spirit Visage, CDR reduced from 20 down to 10%. And Sunfire Cape, the magic damage has been changed. So instead of a flat 40, it's 25 plus character level. So I want to say the break-even point is like 15? Yeah, obviously, 25 plus 15 is 40. So at level 15, it'll actually do more damage. But the big thing about Sunfire Cape is that it allows you to trade really well in top lane if you rush it, because 40 magic damage early in the game per second is actually really good. So I think these were necessary nerfs. Spirit Visage and Sunfire Cape are really, really good items. I still think Spirit Visage is going to be really good if you can take advantage of the healing passive. So champions like, Dr. Mundo, Nasus, Nidalee, any of these other champions that have like self-healing that can take advantage of the Spirit Visage, I think it's still going to be really good. It's still probably one of the best MR items for tanks. Banshee's Veil perhaps could be a stronger pick, just because 20% CR is really, really nice. So bumping this down to 10, I think is a good way to hit it. And Sunfire Cape, I think there will be maybe more people rushing Randuins. Just, I don't know, as an early item, Sunfire Cape was so good. So maybe, I'm curious to see how tanks in the top lane will adapt, if they'll continue to get Sunfire Cape just because it's still really good, or if they'll maybe move on to something else because it gives better stats early on. I'm not actually sure. Randuins is a little bit better late game when you're fighting 80 carries rather than like as like a lane item. So I guess we'll see. Next we have jungle items. They added the Spectral Wraith passive to all of them, so this is nice. You know, giving you 8% of the damage dealt as health, 4% as mana. That's really, really nice. I think that this is a good change to these jungle items, which have been a little bit underpowered. We still have Ancient Golem. I mean, this isn't really addressing the power imbalance. Ancient Golem is just so good right now that there really isn't a big reason to pick any of these other two. So I still think that that could be addressed. Maybe it's like a meta thing, just that tanks come out of the jungle a lot better, but I'm very curious to see how exactly this works, and if the Spectral Wraith and the Elder Lizard find their place in competitive junglers. Addressing 2v1 lanes, I don't play competitively, so I don't really think this is going to be very pertinent to my play, but I'm very curious to see as to how this changes professional play. We'll have to keep an eye on that. And then from here, I think this is just some of the other maps. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Some really good changes. I think a lot of the most popular or most frustrating champions got nerfed. If you look at Shyvana, Riven, Nasus, you know, maybe Jinx, Evelynn, Annie, all of the big problem champions in this last patch have been put down a little bit, which I think is really good. Yeah, just kind of a good thing to keep an eye on. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.